Welcome, welcome, welcome. Francis, over to you. We are live and ready to roll.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you're watching this from today. Thank you very much for all our panelists today, especially our guest panelist, Lucy from the Association of British Insurers, and also Magic Martin, who's is it 4 or 5 times Guinness World Record for doing magic. So this is going to be a very interesting session. But today's session is all about cyber insurance, and we've received so many questions when we posted this the session up on LinkedIn. And the whole idea about today is to answer as many of these questions by experts that you're going to hear from in a minute on the panel. Today is the 8th one in this series, and you don't know if you know this, but if you go back to LinkedIn into Security Everywhere, you can actually see all the previous sessions we've done. Just go and listen to them, because there's so much learning in there that would help your business and your staff, and especially your reputation, to stay safe. From a personal point of view, my name is Francis West. I'm the CEO of Security Everywhere. And our mission is to protect at least 1 million businesses from cybercrime by 2026. So let me ask our very first question today. And if I may ask all the panelists just to do a quick introduction before you start answering the questions. But the first one is Simon. Simon, you and I speak about it, and I serve on the panel with you. So many people think, well, why do I need cyber insurance? I'm a small business. They'll never come after me. What's your view on this?
Yeah, thanks, Francis, and hello, everyone. So just very briefly, I'm Simon Newman. I'm the CEO of the Cyber Resilience Centre for London. So we're one of 9 centres across England and Wales, funded by government to support businesses, particularly SMEs and charities, reduce their vulnerability to common cyber threats. So really excited to be talking about the cyber insurance issue, which, as you say, is becoming increasingly common in terms of question that we get asked on whether a business should take out insurance or not. I've written some statistics down, but I know you've been talking about this elsewhere. I think there are probably 4 reasons why we've got a low level of insurance take up at the moment by businesses. In fact, the Cyber Breaches Survey, which is produced by government every year, published around about March, April time, now includes a section on cyber insurance. So we can take some data from that, for the businesses that they survey. And they estimate around about 1/3 of businesses have some form of cyber insurance. Now, that may not necessarily be part of or not be a dedicated cyber policy, perhaps part of a more general business policy that they have. But it's gone down, and the numbers of businesses being insured around cyber risk is going down, which I think is obviously a concern. So I mentioned, for me, there are 4 perhaps issues that we see, or 4 reasons why organisations aren't taking out insurance. Number one is that I think the insurance market in terms of cyber is still relatively new in the UK. So premiums and coverage and exemptions, etc., are still evolving to some extent. So I think that's one factor which is worth noting. Some organisations perhaps think they're already covered with their existing business insurance. Some may not necessarily read the small print to see whether it includes them around cyber. So I think that's a second one. I think there's a lack of awareness around cyber in general. So it's still a difficult task that we've got, as you know, Francis, trying to educate businesses around the importance of putting controls in around cybersecurity. That's one challenge, but trying to actually then think about cyber insurance is another big step for them as well. So we've still got this issue about trying to get them to take it up. And I think, again, as we know, lots of organisations, particularly at smaller end, don't necessarily see themselves as a target. So why do I even need to have insurance in place? So for me, those are perhaps the main reasons that we're seeing. But as I said at the beginning, what's worrying is perhaps there are now fewer organisations who are taking out insurance than there have been previously.
So that's really good feedback, especially the four areas that you've mentioned there, Simon. But tell me, I mean, you look after, you said the CEO of the London Cyber Resilience Centre, and there are 1 million small businesses in London alone. How many of them do you know roughly will have an effective cyber insurance policy right now? or am I
Yeah,
putting
well,
you on the spot?
I can't say exact figures. We do survey every business that we engage with, and insurance is one of those questions that we do ask. If you look at the demographics of businesses in London, about 86% have fewer than 9 staff, 77% are actually sole trader. But I suspect if I was to hazard a guess, my answer would be very few actually have cyber insurance at all. So, I would say that certainly along the smaller type of organisations, there are probably fewer who have cyber insurance than perhaps understandably the larger ones.
And when you speak to, because you deal with some cases, where people obviously have suffered an event, a cyber attack, or they've been scammed, and they come to you, when you say to them, do you have cyber insurance? What's the common answer then?
Often no, and it's really sad when people do come to us, and this is why for me we're so passionate about promoting the benefits of cyber insurance. It's not just about the financial compensation in the event that there are costs to business that could be recovered, but it's actually the expertise and the help that insurers can often provide those businesses. And it's not necessarily even technical expertise. It may be things like communications experts, lawyers, for example, accountants, other experts who the insurers have worked hard to pull together boards or sort of marketplaces, if you like, of these specialist firms who are all there to help those businesses get back up and running as quickly as possible. Without that, sadly, the organisation in many cases is left on its own, and to try and work out how best to navigate what is a very stressful time, and one where it's difficult to know who to turn to get that assistance and support. So, we are very much in the camp of supporting businesses to take out cyber insurance, which will hopefully reduce their risk, and in the event of an incident or attack, get them back up running as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Simon. I mean, on this point, I think that leads in really nicely into James. James, you're an insurance man and know the industry really, really well. When a business comes to you and says, "I want cyber insurance," what's the process do you follow? And of course, do they get complete cover? Is everything included, or how does it work? How do you determine what people are covered for and what they're not covered for?
So, hello everybody. My name is James Cooper. I'm the Group Managing Director of Astara. We are cyber risk management specialists. We uniquely offer a combination of insurance and cyber risk management advice. Our primary target market is actually the maritime sector, of which there are many SMEs within that group. But it also means that we actually have to take a slightly bigger picture view of what's actually happening in the cyber insurance market. When people want cyber insurance, the vast majority of the time, they don't really know actually what they want to do, nor do they necessarily know what they need to do. So actually, we spend a lot of our time actually educating clients, speaking at different events like this, saying a lot of this is about, in terms of managing your own cyber risk, because contrary to popular opinion, insurance is meant to pay for what we technically call a fortuity rather than a certainty. We understand that if it's in the world of cyber security, it's impossible to build a wall high enough or thick or deep enough or thick enough. Somebody will find a way to get through somewhere, but you can do the basics. Now, I myself am not a cybersecurity expert, but from the insurance side, we look about it when it goes wrong. But what we do also know is there are a lot of very basic things that you can do to get yourself in the right place to have a fair chance. Really, what a company different companies have different sizes have different capabilities and responses. So very small SMEs, we've mentioned sole traders earlier, they can't do everything under the sun. They need some basic things, but they need to understand that there are some really sensible things they can do. I think we all are used to using things like MFA and one-time passwords and all that kind of basic hygiene which has been imposed, and all on our phones we always have to do these updates, and I think most people are probably fed up with a Windows update getting in the way of the computer operating. But those are really, really important things. If you can start articulating what it is you're doing, and a lot of this is actually just common sense, then you're probably 60 or 70% of the way there. When you get into buying cyber insurance, the kind of policy that you want and the service that you need really does depend on the type of organization. I think as a small bit of a history, if you go back to the heady days of GDPR coming in, which I think we were all beaten over a cudgel with to pay attention to it. A lot of cyber insurance is built about privacy. Much more recently, ransomware has come in, and which is much more, I would say, GDPR was much more how to look after records and good old-fashioned information insurance. Ransomware and things, that's much more about do you have the right technical provisions kind of in place? All of which though comes down to how do you as a company manage the cyber risk overall? And if you're a big company, you've got to be sophisticated, you've got to do the right things. If you're a small company, it doesn't have to be sophisticated. It's just a case of doing the simple things well.
So, thank you for that explanation, James. But do you sometimes decline when somebody comes to you and asks for cyber insurance? Do you ever decline a company's request, or do you just say yes to everybody?
The answer is yes. I mean, fundamentally, nobody has. Yeah. Yes is the answer. Fundamentally, nobody has a right to an insurance like this. It's not a compulsory class of insurance. If some people aren't doing the basics, so for example, they don't deploy passwords or the like, then you're basically giving an open door to the bad actors out there. And there is a simple analogy out there, which is these people who are the mainstream hacking activities, they'll go for the easy targets. If you go back to, I think it was a very famous event of WannaCry, if you had Windows 8, not Windows 7, you wouldn't have been hit by it. But even if you'd done the patches on Windows 7, you would have been okay. There are some relatively simple things that you can. That's why we talk about doing the simple things well. Quite often, use the tools available to yourself.
Yeah, it's getting the basics in place. I've got lots of other questions for you, James. I'll come back to you in a second, but I'm delighted to welcome one of our guest speakers today, Lucy from the Association of British Insurers. And my question, well, I've got lots of questions for you, Lucy, but my first question to you is, what should somebody look out, or what are the common exclusions that exist in a cyber insurance policy?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lucy Fraser. I work at the Association of British Insurers. And that's a really great question. As we've kind of thought through, cyber insurance doesn't cover everything for everybody. It covers, quite often it is about kind of data breaches and ransomware threats and those concerns. But I guess it won't cover, for example, if you expected your insurer to pay your fine to a regulator for you. That's not legal. It's not something insurers can do. It will support you with the resources you need to communicate to regulators and the things you might want to say to them and kind of planning for that. And then the actual conversations you need to have during, if the unfortunate thing happens and you are attacked. Other things it might not cover, it's broadly kind of as a theory, it's when the event is so big that it's far beyond what the insurance sector is really there to look after. So if you thought of maybe a war scenario, or if you thought of an attack to a nuclear power plant or a piece of what's called kind of critical national infrastructure, those are really typical things that insurance doesn't cover. And I'm sure everyone on the call is aware, but the principles of insurance are to pool a risk so that everybody puts into the pot, and if somebody gets hit or suffers some kind of problem, that pot can support them and help them recover. In these really big events, it's everybody in the pot getting hit at the same time, which is a really different kind of situation. And that's where governments and, regulators and kind of whole economies need to think through how to deal with those problems. So,
in your mind, thank you for the explanation, but is there such a thing as a good policy or a bad policy? I mean, what can the people that's listening to the session today, and they've spoken to their broker, and their broker goes, yeah, you can just add on this policy and then you'll be covered. What do they need to look out for?
Well, reading the policy is really crucial, and James was also mentioning, the company themselves need to have thought through, what do I do? Do I have lots of web presence online? Do I have lots of sensitive information? Am I a healthcare provider? Do I have loads of buildings? Am I, a school? Do I have that infrastructure? Is that my primary concern? And then once that company understands what's their core business and what are the core assets that they're holding on their computer networks, that's when they'll know whether their policy covers the risks that really matter to them and what is going to stop them from being able to work. A social media company is 100% going to have to worry a lot about their web presence and how they interact online and what they say and what records are out there. And I think a lot of what GDPR did was make holding personal data a really big concern. So if that is a big concern for a company, you certainly want to make sure that your policy is protecting you if those personal records were stolen, or if a member of staff accidentally, left their phone on a train and somehow those records were kind of exposed. So certainly it's just about the risks that you have and about your attention to detail when you read through these policies. Certainly the ABI has a great website that can kind of walk people through, just the really kind of common things that cyber insurance usually covers, what it can't cover. If your insurer told you that they were covering you for, that they were going to pay your regulatory fine, I would say that's a big red flag, and 100% that, that's not something you should be.
Because that was one of my questions. ICO fine now is what, 4% of the total global turnover. So James, is there, between obviously Lucy and James, can you not get a cyber insurance policy that would actually pay the ICO fine? Never mind the ransom.
So the Astara policy wording does provide coverage for the fines and penalties, because we operate globally. There's some countries where fines are permissible, but within the UK context, it is true the fines cannot be covered. However, as Lucy did say, when the ICO gives a ruling, one is the pure fine, then the other bit is effectively the amount that the business then has to contribute to rectifying the problem. That element is actually insurable because that's not technically a fine. The issue that the insurer actually has, and this again goes to the question about will people be declined? If they're not showing the aptitude to respond to an ICO request, then you start questioning, why would you actually want to insure them? Do they actually care about these digital data assets as personal identifiable information? And it is definitely, we all know how important personal data is, and the criminals out there want to get their hands on it somewhere from somehow. If you're dealing with the ICO, and this really goes back to not necessarily the insurance, but how insurers look at it, is, are you aware that you need to report within 72 hours of being aware of the breach? Do you have a ready-made communication policy to go out there straight away to say, we're aware of this, we are communicating with the right people? And the point about that is, if you are seen to being proactive and do this, they accept that you will get breached. They're not against them being breached. It's how you respond and how you deal with it. So I think if we go back when BA had their record fine, and that was a fine, that was because they'd ignored it for 6 months. And then when they were asked about it, I think by the ICO, they said, well, it's not really a problem because there's only a tiny amount of data. And that basically, when you're a global company, BA as part of the IAG group, you suddenly look at a very, very large number.
Yeah, very, very interesting. It's so here's another question, either Lucy or James. What percentage of cyber attacks are actually paid out in full to recover companies in the UK? Do you have a figure for that or an idea? So it's a leading question, because how many companies take out policies and then do not get paid out because there was some problem with the filling in the form, because it's an issue that Ben and I discussed in detail earlier today. about, a lot of people do take out cyber insurance, and on the day when they claim, they go, no, sorry, you're not covered because you didn't fill in the form properly, because they didn't know. They didn't, one could say they lied. Maybe they didn't lie. They just didn't know better, or they were badly advised at the time. What do you say, Lucy?
I'd say yes. Of course, cyber insurance does pay its clients. There are instances where maybe a business hasn't understood its risks properly, or, I mean, I think it's probably a bit simple to say they didn't fill out the form properly, but those regulations and rules matter. A business does need to prepare for this correctly and think through what it's trying to cover and, the risks it's trying to mitigate. And part of that is being able to kind of protect yourself and then work with your insurer, with those experts that James was talking about, the legal professionals and the communications professionals, the security professionals that insurers bring together to support those businesses. And a lot of that work is done before the incident. So quite often the insurance policy is actually there to prevent something happening in the first place.
How?
So I think certainly in the kind of planning documentation phase, an insurer will understand really clearly kind of what information the legal teams might want to talk through, or what information the regulators might want to talk through, and they can help their clients think through that. So the insurer is there to ideally prevent the worst from happening, and if it does, then that product is there to cover the financial losses in that case. Yeah. Because
the other thing that we see, again, Ben and I, is that some people we speak to, again, especially smaller business owners, they think because they've got cyber insurance, oh, well, I've got insurance now, so I don't have to spend money on improving my internal security systems or services.
So
do you see that as a common issue, or is it just the people that we deal with?
I mean, if we look at the kind of I guess what the penetration rates of the market. So only kind of 10% of UK businesses have cyber insurance, small businesses have cyber insurance. And I think that speaks to the insurers quite often having to say, actually, I'm sorry, but you're not eligible for this insurance. And actually you need to go away and think more carefully about your IT infrastructure. So that, I think that kind of highlights that no, insurers aren't just insuring everybody all the time at all. And that's certainly not the case.
Do you think it's going to become law? Like we have all the other Office and PI and all the other insurance and car insurance, do you think it's going to become mandatory?
It's a very good question. I mean, cyber insurance, cyber risk is really different. It's not a bomb. It's not something you can see in the street. It's not a flood. It's something that businesses often feel really ashamed about, often feel really confused about. It's a risk that is really difficult to quantify in an open way without, potentially giving an advantage to a threat actor. So for all of these reasons, it's really tricky to know whether this risk will reach a tipping point. And certainly those are conversations that do happen and are happening quite actively. So it's just a question that we're all trying to, think through at the moment. It's definitely not, it's not going to happen, but it's not a certainty by any means either. And the market, has to, as well as the risk changing and evolving and diversifying, the market has to evolve and diversify the offers of how it's helping clients deal with those problems. It's such a fast changing set of issues. But James is really bang on when he says there are so many simple things that aren't, you don't have to boil the ocean kind of thing. You can look online on the government's web pages and sit for an hour and do their free training, or you could, just think about where your data is stored. And if it's, do you have an offline copy?
Yeah.
And, so there's so many experts on the call. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but.
No, exactly. Ben, do you want to add to this?
Well, I think that was fairly comprehensive by Lucy. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are in the world, connecting to another one of our Security Everywhere, Cybersecurity LinkedIn events. I I think there's a very similar challenge between the cybersecurity industry and what we see on and what we've seen for the last couple of months, Francis. And it is that it won't happen to me, head in the sand type approach, where not only a lack of understanding, but the whole fear that goes around the admitting that I have been done, and the stigma that goes with it. So there isn't enough frank conversation about this between the smaller organisations. I mean, it's easy for the bigger corporate types and large companies that have got the budgets to just throw money at it, but for a smaller company, it's obviously much more of a consideration when they're managing budgets, particularly as we're in an uncertain economic world at the moment. What's good is the dialogue you're now having, Francis, with organisations and with people such as James, and it's looking at how we can actually bundle in the fact that the risk is vastly reduced if you're using certain cybersecurity products. So ensuring somebody who's using Norton, other traditional AVs that are equally as useless are also available. If they're on the traditional old technologies, they should be getting the same. They should have a more expensive premium than someone who's using the latest AI-driven technology, because there's been such a paradigm shift in the technology that we're using for security now, that that makes a massive difference in terms of the levels of security. That obviously everyone's well aware of the explosion of AI this year, and ChatGPT and these large language models, and how they're going to be used to create deep fakes, to create fake videos, text, phishing emails. Well, we've actually been using AI to fight back and to detect and to keep people secure for the last 3.5 years using the products that we do. So there's a massive difference between the levels of security that are out there, just between how to protect your computer or how to protect your inbox. And it's trying to find a way that we can leverage the better protected people to then have lower premiums. So therefore, it's great that people like yourself and James are actually having these conversations to say, right, how can we make it affordable? How can we bundle this? How can we do security everywhere? What do we do? We're simplifying cybersecurity for people. And one of those things that would be a nice step forward is to actually be able to bring the insurance in under that sort of one banner, where a small company or an SME can actually go, right, yeah, I'm going to take that package, because if I get that, and that on my cybersecurity, I can then get this kind of insurance because they know that I meet this criteria. And I think that would be so valuable to the SME market. But because obviously it's got to be underwritten, and I'm fully aware that with the massive increase in compromises, and it's not just ransomwares, it's just the general data theft and the extortion that's going on. So rather than locking your data up, they're stealing it and threatening to extort you. I think that the insurance market itself is really struggling where to set the premiums, because of it's very hard to quantify what they're having to pay out following a breach. So it's a bit of a rock and a hard place, but it's great that we're having these conversations, Francis, because it's helping to hopefully raise awareness around the issue. Yeah. And it's great that the cyber insurance industry is much more proactive now about the way that they're approaching small companies, because of the fact that it's going back to the starting point, the difficulty in getting people to engage with it, because as a small business, it won't happen to me.
Yeah, so, exactly.
So that doesn't really answer a question, Francis. It's
no, but I was interested in your view on it. It's
the observation of what we've seen over the last couple of years. So it is really that there's much more collaboration and involvement going on between the security and the insurance industry. But I think we've still got a way to go.
Thank you, Ben. I've been itching to get Martin to do his bit. We've been talking for some time now, and the only platform that Martin is not on all the time is LinkedIn, and I'm helping him actually to build his LinkedIn profile. So he's kindly offered to come and show us some some magic, because in the world of hacking and scamming, he could make a lot more money with these skill set doing bad things and good things. So Martin, thank you so much for joining us. I'm eagerly awaiting to see what you're going to be doing now.
No worries. Well, thank you very much for having me along. And yes, hello there, one and all. So just to give you a bit of insight into myself. So my name is Martin Rees. I am a Guinness World Record breaking magician. And I met Francis and Ben a few months ago. And in the time that I've known them now, I've stolen, Francis, I stole your watch, didn't I? I think I've hacked both of your passcodes on your phones. And just in general, that's very much what I do. Is I use essentially everything the cyber criminals are doing. I do, but I just do it in an honest way for entertainment purposes. So there is a bit of a crossover there between the two, because it all comes down to social engineering, phishing, things that I use on a daily basis, but these people are using to obviously for malicious purposes. And especially like James was saying earlier, the thing above everything else, and certainly for me operating as a sole trader, essentially, I am a small business myself, and this is a prime example. There's so many different insurance packages out there. I'll be honest, it doesn't apply to cybersecurity, but I did a couple of years ago try to get my hands insured just in case. These are my tools of the trade, but transpires I couldn't insure a single just one body part. I had to insure the whole body. But in any case, let me just do a quick trick for you all right now, just to put kind of what I do into context. And also I've got a couple of other little things I was going to mention as well. But just an example right now of the way that magicians can influence situations, or kind of get a gauge on people before they've really said too much. I want you all right now, each and every one of you watching, no matter where you are in the world, to think of the first playing card that drops in your mind. Don't jump around different cards. Just go with the first card that you get in your mind. Now, I have got two playing cards right here, and I'm going to show you these in a second. Now, if any of you are thinking of these cards, if you're on one of our panelists today, just make to put your hand up. And also, if you're watching wherever you are around the world and you're thinking of one of these cards, then just put the card that you're thinking of in the chat box in the comments. But I've got here the Ace of Spades and Queen of Hearts. So has anyone got the Ace of Spades or Queen of Hearts in their mind right now? I can see you've just reacted there. Were you thinking of one of those? No? No? Oh, okay. Oh, you were. Okay, good. Okay. So these statistically tend to be the cards that most people jump to when they first go for a card. Now, Mac, because you reacted there, I would like you please to pick one of the other panelists for me, and whoever you name, I'm going to go with that person's card.
I'm going to go with Simon.
Simon, okay, Simon, don't tell me your card just yet, okay? Now, I've got a deck of cards right here, Simon. I just want you to think of your card for me. Just repeat it again and again in your head. I'm now going to take my cards off camera, and I'm now going to take one card out of the deck, and I'm going to turn it upside down and put it back in. Do you play poker, Simon?
I don't know.
You've got a pretty good poker face going on right now. Okay. Actually, all right. Okay, that was that. So I'm going to say it's not that one. I reckon it is this one right here. So I've now turned one card upside down. I'm going to push it back in and keep the cards in shot at all times. Now, Simon, before you tell us your card, it's a little curveball right now. Do you want to change your mind? Or do you want to stick with this card?
I'm gonna change my card.
Okay, not many people tend to change their mind at this point, Simon. So now it's going to get interesting. So go on, tell us. Right, just tell us what card you're going to change your mind to.
Okay, I'm going to go to 3 of clubs.
3 of clubs. And before then, what card were you thinking of before that?
Jack of diamonds.
The Jack of diamonds. Now, was there a particular reason for changing to the 3 of clubs at all?
No, as I was thinking of Jack of diamonds, for some reason the 3 of clubs came into my head. That was the only reason.
Perfect. Okay, now the thing is, the cards have been in shot, as have my hands this whole time, Simon. Okay, you could have named any card, could have stuck with the Jack of diamonds. Now, I'm not going to do any shuffling at all. Okay, if I go through the cards, all the cards are all face up in the deck. Now, you could have named any card. You could have changed your mind to any other card, but you didn't. You changed your mind to one. There's one card upside down that I put upside down, Simon. It just so happens to be the 3 of clubs. So good job you didn't change your mind, eh? Now, Simon, are you sure there was no particular? Do you feel like I influenced you to pick the 3 of clubs at all?
I don't know. It was bizarre. Something just made me think. I had this. I was like, right, Jack of diamonds, and all of a sudden that card just popped into my head. It was really weird.
Well, this is exactly it. And this is literally the first time we've ever met, Simon. We've never met,
Absolutely.
we've never
Yeah, yeah.
spoken, never interacted before this moment, right? So for everyone watching, this is a genuine thing. I'm very good at what I do. But the thing is, this is all about perception, like I said, because you could have stuck with the Jack of Diamonds. There's nothing on my hand, Simon. But what you didn't realize is on my finger, I have one card, which is the 3 of clubs, which I have been secretly flashing to you this whole time. It's actually a tattoo as well, which Francis
Wow.
and Ben probably have seen before, I think. But there we go. So that is a prime example right there of how using the little skills and psychological tricks that I know, that you can just subtly guide someone to, and take advantage of them essentially. So, but all the more reason to get the insurance. I mean, like I said, we from our side use it for entertainment purposes, but even things like kind of just the general amount of different like problems there are these days, and especially like you say with the cybersecurity aspect and AI now being so massively incorporated in quite a scary speed as well into mainstream just life as well. The whole industry is just evolving, and it's constantly evolving. But the thing above everything else, which it all comes down to, for whether you're a small business, a medium business, or a big giant big corporate tech, it just comes down to the basics, like James said, making sure you've got the right basic principles in place, because that eliminates 99% of the problems. And it's just down to education, especially phishing emails and kind of things like that. They are becoming so intelligent these days, or even with AI now being able to replicate someone's voice on a call and being able to scam people thinking that they're genuinely speaking with that person. So it's just about education and just putting the basic principles in place, like password or two-factor authentication or one-time passwords, like you said, James. And they do make a big difference. So anyways, that is a little bit of an insight into my world and from me. And I will pass
Martin,
it back to you.
thank you so much. I mean, you've done so many sessions for us, and you unlocked my phone upside down, which nobody ever was able to do. And dare I say it was an iPhone as well, which is mental. So we look forward to having you again on our next session, which, by the way, is going to be all about supply chain and supply chain attacks. So I've still got quite a number of questions here, but I just wanted to mention Colin Raphael's email or message that he sent here. He said a business when offered cyber insurance will say they pay their IT team to protect them. So often we'll see it as a cost. They don't want to pay. IT security is on the same side of the coin. Need cyber insurance on the other side to give the total package, and that's so true, Colin, because all the time people say, well, once we've installed all your cyber services, do I still need to have cyber insurance? And yeah, 100%. It's end to end, because if you, God forbid, that's never happened, but if it did happen and you did get hacked for some reason or ransomed, it's that massive issue about dealing with the media and dealing with loads of other people, dealing with your customers and suppliers, all that stuff, is not included in our protection services. So that's why, we always recommend end to end. Now, I've got an interesting question. I hope I like to think, James and Lucy. We've spoken to, I don't know, tens of insurance firms over the last 4 or 5 years. And I'll tell you a story. So this lady, local company, runs a building firm. Head of finance is Maria. Now, Maria has been working with the business probably since inception, about 30 years. And I'll give you the short version. Email comes in, she clicks on a link, and she fell for invoice fraud. And she lost the business just over £60,000. Now, that happened, when was that? This January, February time. When I last checked a month ago, she's still not back at work. Why? Because she felt so personally responsible that she was the one that lost that small building firm just over £60,000. So my question that I always pose to insurance firms is, tell me, does your cyber insurance policy include, let's call it rehabilitation, or helping that Lady Mary to get back into business, to get back to the office, not feeling responsible? So it's an emotional part of the cyber policy. So my question to you both, James and Lucy, do you know of any policies that actually will include to help Mary get back to work and not feel so responsible for what happened?
If I start off on this one, in a strict basis, it's very unlikely that a cyber insurance policy will pay to make somebody feel better. However, it is all about how you handle the claim. Our starting point is very much that, as I think I've said already, there's no wall high enough, there's no wall thick enough, something can get through. Everybody can also make an error and a mistake. What we are able to do with appropriate handling of the claim is say, look, these things actually happen to everybody. We will do our best to make it good. And going back to the point about, let's assume the IT is okay. Interestingly, the invoice fraud isn't technically cybersecurity. That's basically man in the middle bypassing around it.
Now,
but
sorry,
the
James,
outcome is still the same.
Sorry, Jay, I didn't want to interrupt you there, but this is where you're getting to is very important. I think a lot of people don't understand that there's two parts of a cyber breach. And some people are only insured for one of them instead of both of them. Do you know what I'm referring to? Sorry to interrupt you there. So you've got the criminal element and the cyber element.
Yeah, so I'd say our cover actually has really can fit to two sides. One is pure cyber, which is unauthorized access to computers, if we use the National Cybersecurity definition. The other bit is what we could much more call cybercrime. Cybercrime has two sides. One of it is ransomware, because that is crime, but the other one effectively is e-payment fraud. E just because it's got some electronic thing, where essentially somebody sends an email in, somehow they've got into the loop. It could be because you've left an email lying around, but say your name or the email address has an O in it, and they change it for a 0. When people are scanning through, it's hard to do that. We all know, I think, when we use something like Microsoft Outlook and the like, obviously other email vendors that are available, but if you hover over the email address, you can see the underlying address that is attached to it. So the first thing is not to assume. But to the point about how do you make somebody who's been on the wrong end of this, it's basically a sympathetic handling of it. This is, there is a reality is this does happen. In the world of shipping, there's some big money in place. So we've actually helped the client of ours who they came to us because $1 million had gone to the wrong bank account, and it involved typically a bit of Egypt, a bit of Turkey, a bit of Dubai, a dose of Malaysia, and the inevitable Nigeria, somewhere in the mix. We were able to get quite a lot of that money back but we were in a much more sophisticated place. So point being is, it doesn't matter how big you are and whether you've got all these right processes, it can still happen. And that's where the sympathy comes in. And actually, this is where the elements of the cyber insurance breach response element comes in, because that does where you do get the PR responses, etc. It does get much more complicated when somebody feels that personal blame. Now, strangely, the positive side of that is that actually, they did care. They didn't want to do the right thing, which goes back, I think, to another point about just buying insurance doesn't mean that you can then ignore your cybersecurity going forwards. But the central point does come down. It's not, you can't, kind of psychology counseling isn't included within it, but how one manages the claim is really, really important.
Yeah. No, thank you, James. Lucy, I would like to pass back to you on that same point. I noticed we've only got 12 minutes. Time always goes by, and I've got at least another 4 or 5 questions to ask everybody. So if you don't mind, Lucy, if you can keep it to maybe a minute or two, your thoughts on that last question. As the API.
Yeah. Insurance exists for when things go wrong. The way that claims are made and handled is fundamental to what insurance is. And it's not just for cybercrime, it's for when someone's home burns down, or the end result is the same thing, they've lost their business. And so it's baked into what insurance is and what it's offering people. And it might not be about the psychological counseling you receive, but certainly solving someone's problems can make them feel better.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's just sad, I tell you, because we deal with these cases on a daily basis, and it's so annoying because we know that they could have been avoided in, I would say, 95% of the time. So coming back to where's the best place for somebody or a business owner to go and buy their cyber insurance? Do they just go online and go to a comparison site, or who's the best person that they should ask, or company they should go and ask to get their cyber insurance?
Did you want me to,
Yeah, Lucy, yeah, please. Yeah. Lucy, do you want to go first, Lucy, then James?
It really depends on your type of business. But certainly you should be speaking to a broker to get them to help you think through what kind of business you have, what kind of insurance you might need. And there is lots of neutral advice out there. The Association of British Insurers is kind of there to do that, not to sell insurance, but just to be the kind of start point for a lot of people when they're thinking through those questions. So that's what I'm saying. It can be a really different journey for a multinational shipping company or somebody who, owns a small business in London. Yeah.
And it just on that point, I don't know if it's related, although going back to different sectors in the UK, are there certain sectors that are more open to taking out cyber insurance compared to others, James or Lucy?
The one that comes to mind, maybe like legal professionals. It's really about the nature of the business. You've got lots of very sensitive information, lots of very sensitive documents. You might be working from home without the protection of a company's infrastructure around you to kind of rely on to have thought through these questions. So, and also the financial sector is a really, one that comes to mind as well, given that most fraud and most cybercrime or cyber-enabled crime, it's about money. They want your money, they want the money you have, or they want to make money from what you have. And understanding that is probably the first step, really, is what do I have that's valuable? How could they take it from my online footprint? Yeah.
I always say to people, I don't have any sensitive data. And I go, I'd like you to go into your sent items and search for passport or flight or wage or pay slip, and then you tell me you've got nothing. So we've got Mac. Mac, I know you've been very quiet, and you're our LinkedIn expert. And again, thank you so much for helping us hosting these events. You see, just from I just thought about a few ideas as we're running out of time. We've got 8 minutes to do some advice on prevention. How can we've now, I'm sure we've all established that our recommendation is, without any doubt, is to go and take out cyber insurance. But, in our world, security everywhere world, prevention is the only game, or is the only option. So coming back to LinkedIn, as a lot of people are here on LinkedIn, what advice can you give people to make sure that LinkedIn account doesn't get hacked? Never mind the rest.
Was that question for me or for Lucy?
Yeah, no, for you.
I think there's several very quick ones. One of them is email, making sure that you have your most up-to-date contact information on your LinkedIn profile. A lot of people don't know that you can put a secondary email address as a recovery email address. Doing that is a major help, because if you've just got one and they go and hack it, that's it. Making sure two-factor authentication. This guy Francis from somewhere that told me about this. Now I'm locked out of everything until I can pass all these hoops. But it's made such a big difference, because one of the things you can see on your devices is where somebody else is logged into your account. And I've had some interesting attempts, because I'm pretty prolific on LinkedIn, and because most people put their contact info, which is generally kind of your login email address. So it's a bit obvious. It's like, so I just have to get the password, and a lot of people will post about personal things, and like the magic man over there, there's a certain go-to set of information that people will go for, birth dates, all the questions they have on the bank about mother's maiden name and all that kind of thing. So these are the things that I would suggest is try and keep out of view, and don't share when you go on holiday. Post about it after you come back, not when you've gone. Is a big one. But can I ask a question, Francis?
Absolutely.
So this one is either for James or for Dr. Lucy. When it comes to insurance for cybersecurity, does it, as a layman, does it only cover the loss that you incur, or does it cover the fixing of the problem as well?
I think the majority of the wording, some wordings are written more clearly than others. The majority of the wordings, you get breach response as a core basic product. A broader product does include data loss and data restoration. You can then, in addition, for example, buy things like business interruption cover. So it very much, and amazingly, the price changes depending on what you're doing because it's broader cover. I know our policy wording, I think, is pretty standard. It says that we will pay for effectively the data restoration for 12 months because that basically includes new licenses and downloading of new data. Clearly, we don't pay for it forevermore, but effectively we cap it within a 12-month window simply because you have to get it back there somewhere. And guess what? Most things are on annual licenses, so to pay it back once, you basically get 12 months. If somebody wants to go for 2 or 3 year licenses because they're cheaper, we haven't actually been asked the question, but I'm pretty certain that would be divide by 2 or divide by 3 equals the annual number, and things like that.
And I could add just to say, so you can buy just for the direct financial losses that you suffer, which is what James is kind of talking through. But then you can also buy for the kind of liability action that might be taken against you as a result of you having suffered that attack. Maybe you were unable to fulfill certain duties in your business, or people, suffered issues with the fact you lost their data. So that's typically first and third party cover, which is the 2 things. And then the third thing that cyber insurance can offer is that pre, during, and post support. So that would be your panels, your how to communicate, how do you write an incident plan, how do you configure your security? You might have advice about security, and what that looks like and what's good and what's bad and how to use it effectively and things like that. But mostly it's first party cover, which is a direct financial loss that you or your business suffered as a result of an event.
So great question, Mac. The one question which I think is so obvious that I didn't think why we haven't asked it yet is how much does it cost to get cyber insurance? Typically,
can I say that really does depend on how long is the piece of string. It depends on how big you are, how much. There are so many factors. I do know because Star ourselves, we're actually an SME business ourselves. We did actually go and got a range of quotes recently, and I was pleasantly surprised by how much cover I could get for less than £1,000. Now, to the comment earlier, it is an extra cost to the business. Yes, it is, but I can tell you that when you get insurers handling the claims, one, your premium has pretty much covered it, but actually law firm, you go into a funnel where people know what they're doing, how they're responding to everything. So your whole ability to recover is massively accelerated. So I do genuinely think it is good value cover. I know the prices have gone up a lot recently, but guess what? To I think Ben's earlier comment is there isn't a lot of experience about what things cost to fix. And there has been, it was referred to, I think in some of the financial media, as an epidemic of ransomware. By and large, we're getting on top of that, but actually the losses of the few have to be paid by the premiums of the many. And I'm afraid we are in this game to try and make some money, not just be a charitable service.
Thank you, James. Simon, I know normally you like to talk a lot. And
I'm lost for words after Martin's worked his magic on me, Francis.
I know. We haven't seen anything yet. That was just the beginning. We can watch it for hours. Simon, my question to you, and I'm watching the time here, is one of the things that the London Cyber Resilience Centre talks a lot about, or advises, or recommends a lot, is businesses taking out cyber essentials.
Yes.
So, number one, can you just expand on that briefly if you can? And two, also mention about the insurance that's included when people take out, because a lot of people don't know that even exists.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Francis. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was the one thing I was going to sort of put my hand up and say, let's not forget Cyber Essentials. So very briefly, Cyber Essentials is the government's kind of flagship cybersecurity standard that's designed for businesses of all sizes, but probably more applicable to smaller organizations. You can achieve it relatively easily. There's two levels: Cyber Essentials, the basics, and Cyber Essentials Plus. If you go through it, you can actually get insurance that comes with it free of charge. Now, obviously, it's not necessarily going to be as comprehensive as some of the insurance that others were just talking about, but for those micro and small businesses, it's certainly worth having in place. And I think if you look at the cost of Cyber Essentials, which is typically around about £300, depending on the size of your organisation, it's well worth having a look into. And you obviously get the certificate as well, which shows your customers that you take cybersecurity seriously and their data seriously as well.
Well, on that note, does anybody want any closing comments before we complete the meeting today or session?
So, Francis, there was one query about cyber insurance and whether it covers a GDPR data breach. So I don't know if James or Dr. Lucy.
I think that was covered right at the beginning, but do you want to answer it again very briefly there, if you don't mind, James?
Yeah, the answer is the elements of it can be covered, like the cost of dealing with the ICO, etc. Any fines in the UK are not recoverable.
Lovely, thank you, James.
There you go. I'm just putting the link as well for the London Cyber Resilience Centre. Well, on that note, I'd like to thank you all our panelists and all their expertise, and also our magician. And I'd like to remind you that we also holding a Ask Us Anything, because today we kind of answer questions, but we do try and answer questions when they come on. But we actually have a separate session on always the third Thursday of the month, from 4 p.m. till 5 p.m. to help people from around the world, especially the US and other countries that's later than us. So please come and join us. It's run by Sheldon Reynolds, the guy that deals with all our, or helps me on the new business side. And he normally hosts it, and it's normally myself and Ben that answers the question. So it'll be great if you can come and join us then. And also remember that these sessions are always on the first Thursday of the month between 12 and 1 p.m. GMT time. So thank you again for everybody's time, and I wish you a very safe rest of the day, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you very much, Francis.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you, Francis. Thank you, everyone.
Everyone.
Oh yeah, we do stay on the call. I was like, do we stay on the call?
Say again, how do you find that, Lucy?